9 for a change. Kakashi. I am so sorry, Obito. Here's another one I couldn't protect. Hatake Kakashi was usually better at keeping himself together. Amidst an Anbu assignment, dressed in black with a pale armor vest and a white mask covering his face, Kakashi was supposed to be operative dog right now. The captain of Anbu Squad Rho, personal guard of the 3rd Hokage. Yet even he couldn't stay unaffected. This had happened inside the walls of his home, against Obito's clan. Kakashi's friend, Uchiha Obito from Team Minato, had died a hero during the Third War, and now the dead littering the streets were his family. Which is why upon arriving at the Uchiha district to find the calamity for himself, only to be told Itachi was behind it, Kakashi had made a beeline for Obito's grandmother. The trail of bodies made what he was about to find abundantly clear, but it still struck like a sucker punch to find her dead too. She'd been left in the hallway, just shy of reaching the door, an escape she never reached before getting stabbed in the back. Had she heard what was happening and tried to go help? Or had the threat been in sight and chased her out? Itachi did this. Traitor. Kin killer. It left a bad taste in his mouth. He'd worked with Itachi, believed he understood Itachi. But someone had to be worse scum than Kakashi to understand this. It was senseless. It's not as if Kakashi hadn't seen this kind of butchery before. Kakashi wouldn't claim he'd grown used to it, especially when it involved murdered kids. But after war and 8 years in Anbu specializing in assassination, Kakashi was probably more desensitized than most, even within Black Ops. It was his job to eliminate enemies of Konoha, be them outside infiltrators or inside traitors. It was a dirty duty, and though Kakashi had seen similar, this hit differently. This hadn't gone down in some foreign land or another's village, not the back alleys of the capital or out in the forests. It was inside Konoha's walls. A slaughter of this scale hadn't occurred since the QB attack, but though the nine-tailed demon had been as destructive and indiscriminate as a natural disaster, it hadn't been personal. This was personal. It was obvious. Itachi's purpose had been to erase the Uchiha bloodline. As he bent down at the woman's side, Kakashi kept his left eye closed. His best friend gifted his Sharingan as he lay dying, asking Kakashi to use its power to protect the people Obito loved, to have a part of Obito keep fighting through that eye. But Kakashi didn't want Obito to see his grandmother like this. The woman had raised him, and after her grandson's death, remained a lonely woman living by herself. Those who break the rules are scum, but those who abandon their friends are worse than scum. Even after 9 years dead, Kakashi could hear his best friend calling him scum clearly, though Obito would probably find a stronger insult for Itachi. Taking a deep breath, Kakashi took a minute to calm the spiraling memories, but not a second longer. He was an Anbu agent in the middle of a mission. This wasn't the place or time. Kakashi went to retrieve the old lady's body, transported it with care to the collection point Anbu set up to gather the dead and get an overview. The Hokage paced agitated along the row of dead Uchihas. The old man's forehead wrinkled, shoulders tense and short of words. Hokage-sama watched him place Obito's grandma next to a dead man, before Kakashi turned on his heel, heading for the next retrieval, only to see his strongest subordinate, Tenzo, carrying the burden of even more dead children. Captain Dog? Tenzo addressed him by his code name with a nod. Kakashi watched him place the kids along the row of dead. The biggest couldn't be older than 9, the youngest a toddler, and the last one... Fucking hell, where's the kid's head? Tenzo's clone came up behind with the decapitated head of a blonde girl. I don't know what she did to piss him off, but Itachi went particularly slash-happy with her. I located the head on the opposite end of the playground from her body. Kakashi had no words. From babies to grandmas, Itachi didn't show anyone mercy. Unwanted images were forming within Kakashi's mind, because how would the logistics of this outcome work for her? Had Itachi cut the head off and thrown it away, but kept slashing at the child's headless body afterwards? Or was it the opposite, where Itachi inflicted damage to her body first, before deciding to decapitate the head second? Was it from some sick urge? Or was it for a purpose? Maybe he'd intended to use the decapitated head to upset the parents? Kakashi halted the morbid trail of thought, knowing he'd come back to it later. Understanding the enemy was a key part of predicting their behavior, which helped in capturing them. And Kakashi'd bet a year's worth of his Ninken's dog treats it'd soon be his duty to hunt Itachi. It's bad, Tenzo said, voice inflectionless. His subordinate might be even more desensitized to this than Kakashi. Tenzo likely hadn't seen quite as many deaths as him, and his kill count didn't reach half of his own. But in return, the majority of his experiences was the aftermath of murders and mutilation on children, being stuck with adults taking out their greed and violence on those too weak to fight back. Just because they're Uchihas? Kakashi said, more in frustration than because he expected an answer. They wouldn't even have the Sharingan yet. He set off down the cobbled street, Tenzo falling into step beside him. I heard the others found a non-Uchiha killed too, his subordinate shared. An Inuzuka and their dead dog. From the Genin photo on the mantle, the Inuzuka was a teammate of the Uchiha who lived there. Really? Kakashi tried to put himself in that Inuzuka's shoes. A visit to a friend's house ending in murder. That could have been him once upon a time. Just like when Kakashi was younger and went to fetch Obito when he was running late, only to walk right into a massacre. Tenzo nodded. An unlucky turn. This was the worst possible day to accept a dinner invitation. Well, you should keep searching along the woods, Kakashi said. Maybe some tried fleeing into the thicket. Tenzo turned in his track, just as a rush of memories flooded into Kakashi's mind alongside a wave of chakra. He'd made a shadow clone to help, but it had just dispelled itself, transferring the chakra and memories it obtained back to the jutsu caster. There's a survivor, a little boy, Kakashi said, straightening up and making Tenzo hesitate. You keep searching, I'm heading over. It was a little further into the heart of the district that Kakashi found a group of Ambu gathered, watching as the unconscious boy was lifted carefully onto a stretcher, and they set off up the streets for the gates, the Hokage himself following the little group. He's going to the hospital? He asked the Ambu who remained behind, one of Kakashi's fellow captains. No physical injuries, but he's not waking up, Ambu Frog told him. You're unable to? I suspect it's a genjutsu attack. Frog shook his head. Better the boy rest and force him to alertness here. Better he wakes up away from this. That's Uchiha Sasuke, the son of Uchiha Fugaku. Better'd make him Itachi's little brother. Though a kid, Sasuke can still know something, Kakashi mused. Seen something. I bet he did, Frog muttered wryly. We should get his account of events. It'll be later. Hokage-sama wants him treated. He's going to the hospital first. Kakashi considered reminding everyone how time was running out. Itachi had already fled, and any small detail could prove useful tracking him down quickly before he hurt someone else. Then again, in his current state, would Sasuke's testimony do any good? Or would it just be hysterical? One survivor. How did it come to this? Kakashi returned to work, head mulling over everything, whether he wanted to or not. Though the Ambu response had rushed to the Uchiha district at Hokage's orders, they'd arrived far too late. Kakashi didn't understand. Sure, he could plainly see what happened, but How could they be too late? How could the Uchiha get killed so fast? How long it took before the alarm activated was chilling. This had happened inside Konoha's walls without a single sensor reacting. Then there was the video feeds Itachi turned off. But how the district went black hours ago should have set off an alarm too. Why hadn't it? They'd been 2 hours delayed to a massacre happening just a couple neighborhoods over from Anbu headquarters. Kakashi had faster response times reaching distant mountains than this. It was ridiculous. Someone was getting fired for this. He didn't care if Itachi had turned the video feed off. Someone on surveillance duty should have noticed the cameras had been turned off for 2 fucking hours. Though it brought the second mystery. How come all the Uchihas couldn't hold out a couple hours against one teenager? Alert and bothered, Kakashi made his way into a house with the names Inabi, Mochi, and Taiko written on the sign on the door, finding the corpses of a familiar police officer and his pregnant wife. Even if not everyone in the Uchiha clan were active field ninjas, things didn't add up. Sure, there were several like Obito's grandma who were too old to stand a chance, or retired ninjas due to injuries. There were some Uchihas by name and not by blood, joining the clan through marriage without holding the bloodline themselves. The children wouldn't prove much difficulty either. And then there were the minority of civilians who were part of the clan, mostly shoprunners or farmers. Kakashi understood how Itachi took out that side of the Uchiha on his own, but a good 40 or 50 of them were active ninjas and part of the police force, such as Inabi here, in his mid-20s at the height of his strength. Whether they had access to the Sharingan or not, all of them were Uchiha not to be messed with. They were the strongest clan in Konoha by a significant margin. And as brilliantly gifted as Itachi was, his powers all stemmed from the Uchiha clan. It seemed imbalanced that he alone could do this against those born with so much of the same potential. Kakashi knew Itachi was the type of prodigy child that outshone other prodigy children. But it was still in the title, wasn't it? At 13 years old, soon to be 14, Itachi was still a child. Was he really this powerful? This was easily Kage levels, perhaps more. Since the entrance sign mentioned 3 inhabitants, Kakashi went to check the other rooms, but came up empty. He went out into the garden to be sure too, when an unexpected hiss pierced the air. His head whipped towards the sound, catching sharp cawing and ricocheting against snarling hisses. It was too dark, but rustling followed by a scatter of leaves falling from a nearby tree drew his Sharingan to where a black cat was locked in a short but lethal battle against a black bird. The cat's claws were pierced deep in the wings of a crow. The cawing bird fought fruitlessly before abruptly going silent when the cat sunk its teeth into its throat, placing its back legs up to use the paw claws to tear the bird's abdomen open. However, it turned out the crow wasn't alone. They rarely are. And the second crow swooped down from behind the black cat, maybe to try and save their friend, or... Kakashi threw his shuriken, the metal swirling through the air and cutting into the second crow with a thud, only an inch away from the cat. Itachi had crow summons. The cat startled, big yellow eyes stared at Kakashi, ears folded flat behind its back, hackles raised and alert. With the crow still dangling in its mouth, the cat leapt soundlessly to a lower branch and down to the ground. It rushed away into the bushes, its black coat bleeding into the darkness in ways even his Sharingan couldn't pick apart. Kakashi wasn't sure what to make of it. Had that simply been nature acting as nature will? Animals following their instincts? Maybe Kakashi was being jumpy, true, but it was better to be sure. At worst he killed a random crow, at best it was one of Itachi's summons, lingering in the area to gather intel. Kakashi went back inside, still undecided, when he heard distant leaves fluttering, wings flapping, birds taking flight, though from several different directions. What was Kakashi to make of that? Were they mere birds that heard a commotion and took flight? Or had Itachi ordered them away because Kakashi killed his crow? There were millions of crows around the world, and they weren't all Itachi's. It's what made that summon so damn annoying. it was impossible to tell the difference. He returned to the collection area with the dead couple. The number of bodies doubled since last visit. Click, clack, click, clack. The recognizable sound of a cane clicking against the cobblestone made Kakashi turn to see Councilman Danzo walk up to the row of bodies. On the surface, Danzo was the sort of person many would underestimate. From looks alone, a civilian might mistake Danzo for a senior patient who'd escaped from Konoha's General Hospital for some fresh air. At least until he spoke. When he spoke, the iron came out. And when he paid attention to you, one could almost taste the tension. With his wrinkled and scarred face, he was a grouchy, unyielding bastard after surviving 3 great wars. But not without sacrifices. He lost an eye, his arm was bandaged, and now he walked with a cane. Yes, Danzo had lost things through decades of war and strife, like his sense of humor, or his empathy, or mercy. Standing amidst the massacre, he was not just unbothered, he seemed almost unaffected. Only one survivor, Danzo mused as a matter of fact. Itachi's hatred for his kin runs deep. He must be eliminated. He gestured for one of his own cloaked ninjas to come forwards. They signed something Danzo nodded to, and without a word the other ninja bowed and left, off to do his master's bidding, just as Ambu Frog came up with another deceased. He was carrying the corpse of Uchiha Fugaku and laid him down with the others. Why take their eyes? Kakashi asked, examining the collapsed socket of the dead clan head. Fugaku's lids were closed, sure, but from the sunken foam it was clear his eyeballs were gone. Itachi's Sharingan is exceptionally strong, so why would he rob so many eyes? To prevent us from getting them, Danzo murmured. Itachi used to be on your squad, Kakashi. He's seen for himself that non-Uchihas can use the Sharingan to dangerous effect. Half of Danzo's face was bandaged, but his one visible eye flickered down at Fugaku's corpse, his indifference giving way for just the slightest hint of irritation. Kakashi frowned. Itachi used to be one of his subordinates on Team Rho, but it hadn't been long before he was promoted to captain himself. It was a while since they last went on a mission together, but now Kakashi thought back, trying to think of a time Itachi had acted out. But there wasn't. The only instance that came to mind was a mission in the Land of Frost, a diplomacy mission gone awry, where they'd been forced to kill the Frost delegation. Kakashi thought Itachi seemed agitated, but assumed it was because he'd killed everyone in the delegation because of the treason of one. Now he re-evaluated everything. He eyed Danzo. Kakashi wasn't expecting any tears from the old warhawk, but could he at least fake a respectful tone? The dead were right there. This was a tragedy. A massacre. Yet all Danzo seemed irked by was the missing eyeballs. Captain, there's a situation. Tenzo appeared in a body flicker, his masked face turning between Kakashi to Danzo to Ambu Frog, as if unsure who to address. There's another one alive, but she's hurt. Where? Frog demanded, stepping up, seeing as he was the only medic here. In the house over there, Tenzo pointed. Ambu Lynx is treating her. The kid's a mess. Frog set off, Kakashi only a step behind him, even as he was a bit confused. Why was Tenzo delivering the message? As Kakashi's subordinate, Lynx should have notified him herself. It'd take a split second with the Ambu seal. Just pushing chakra through it could alert other Ambu, but she hadn't. If this had been a few months ago, Kakashi wouldn't have known who this house belonged to, but now he was aware this was Uchiha Shisui's home. In truth, he'd learned more about Shisui after his death than while the guy was alive, and only because they had people in common, namely Itachi and Yugao. Their behavior in the wake of Shisui's passing, from Itachi's silences to Yugao's needing her first leave of absence, was why Kakashi read through the deceased Uchiha's file. learning that Shisui was Itachi's cousin and used to live under the dress with his parents and little sister, that he'd been one of Konoha's prodigy children too, making Jonin a year earlier than Kakashi'd managed. Shisui had done a lot of missions in the mist, though before everything he'd started his career on a genin team led by Hyuga Hisashi, alongside Sarutobi Itsuki and Izuki Yugao. Today, the only one alive from that team was Yugao, better known as Lynx within Anbu Black Ops. So, of course Lynx would seek out Shisui's house before all the others. She'd been drawn there for the exact same reason Kakashi went to Obito's grandmother. It was one of the few houses harmed by combat. Parts of it splintered and soot covered from fire attacks, but the other side was left intact. Kakashi passed a dead woman with missing eyeballs in the kitchen, heading further down the hall into the living room, where Yugao sat bent over a crumpled child. He glimpsed short black hair and a pale, blood-soaked head under Yugao's laboring fingers. Frog bent down on the other side, examining what was going on. Initially, Kakashi mistook it for a boy, but no. This was probably Shisui's little sister, Haruhi. He exhaled heavily. Another dead kid. Lynx? Unheeding of Kakashi, Yugao kept working with fierce concentration. "I see what you're trying here, Lynx, but there's no use," Frog said. "The only reason she's got a pulse is because you're forcing her heart to beat. The kid isn't coming back from this. It's inevitable. Her head's almost—" "Shut up," Yugao hissed. It was impossible to see either of their expressions through the masks, but there was a frustrated air to Frog, while Lynx was tense as a charged wire, at risk of setting off currents at the slightest mishap. "Lynx, go away! Don't you have a job to do?" Lynx shouted. "You can do your duty or you can help me. Pick one, instead of bothering me, because I am not stopping either way. I can't. Shisui will kill me." "Let her try, Frog," Kakashi suggested. "She's only prolonging the death, keeping her in pain. The girl isn't coming back from this. It's kinder to—" "Don't!" Yugao snarled. "She's fighting! She's stubborn like Shisui. She's better than when I found her." "This is an improvement?" Frog said, disbelieving. The thing was, though, Frog didn't know what tied Lynx to this particular branch of the Uchiha, but Kakashi had a guess. Giving up on the kids might make Yugao feel like she was betraying Shisui's memory. Kakashi knew what it was like to hold that responsibility for a dead teammate. Obito asked the same of him once, and Kakashi learned what sort of devastation could come from failing in that duty too. Fine. With a sigh, Frog ceased his protests. "I don't see how it'll work, but..." He went through several seals, and next Frog's hands flickered with chakra, glowing into a flowing stream of green medical ninjutsu, ready to assist. Kakashi stepped back. He would only get in the way. He looked away from the dying child to check over the rest of the scene. There was a dead man on the left side of the living room. Judging by the blood splatter and the crumpled sitting position, Kakashi guessed the man had initially been killed against the wall, but then slid down. A red liquid streaked in slashing patterns over the family photos decorating the wall. But Kakashi's eye was drawn to one in particular, directly over the deceased man, as it contained the last face Kakashi was prepared to see tonight. Just feet away, Namikaze Minato was smiling back at Kakashi, frozen in a moment that had passed decades ago. In the Genin photograph, Minato-sensei was younger than Kakashi had seen him in life, but he'd recognize his former sensei at any age. So there, amongst a bunch of Uchiha pictures, a youthful Minato-sensei was beaming next to his sensei Jiraiya, alongside an equally young Uchiha and their third teammate. Kakashi looked at the crumpled corpse again, and then up at the photo and back to the deceased. His head was bent down, obscuring his face, but he'd seen him in Shisui's file. "Oh, So Shisui and Harui were the children of Minato-sensei's teammates. That'd make the dead man Uchiha Kaji, the very same Kaji who'd been on Team Jiraiya, a less remembered, less talked of teammate of the Yellow Flash. Because the childish version of his sensei was right there in a familiar photo Kakashi hadn't seen in years. Minato-sensei used to keep his copy in his hallway at home, but this copy was hung up in a prime location for an overview of the living room. Yet, whatever travesties this portrait observed in this room tonight would remain untold. With the glass tainted in red blood splatters of his dead teammate, Minato-sensei kept smiling. Itachi. The Naka River drifted along clean and calm, following along the contours of the bending bank. Itachi kicked off his sandals, removed the support bandages, rolled up the hem of his trousers, and walked into the cool water. Itachi rinsed his legs of grime and sweat, bending at the waist to wash off his arms, elbows, hands, and then his face. Refreshing drops trailed over his heated skin, wetting his bangs, and making him feel more composed. Yet some stains proved more stubborn than others. Itachi turned over his hands, examining the dark flakes stuck under his nails, the skin on his fingertips raw and pinkish. He washed them again and again. Won't come off, Itachi shook his head. No. He glanced over his shoulder and found Shisui walking across the water with his hands in his pocket, humming under his breath while enjoying the midday sun. You'll have to live with it then, Shisui said flippantly. Yes. The way the clear water trickled over his skin made Itachi think back to the other kinds of liquids. Like Sasuke's streaming tears, flowing down his cheeks like Shisui's blood had done after ripping out his eye. It was aching to the blood across his mother and father's slashed backs too. The sounds followed visions, and Itachi's ears rang with his cousin's shock and cries. Veils of defiance, despair, and defeat intermingling. Some went quiet, like his parents, or like Izumi's ripped mind whispering a thanks. But it was overlapped with those who fought back. He still heard Harui screaming, "Stop it! Stop! Stop!" It was so loud. And I did that. He didn't stop. His family were the ones dead, but though his heart beat, Itachi had no future either. His body kept going, but his life had been over since the massacre. Yet he couldn't go die quiet yet either. The only respite was in dreams akin to this one, while the only worth and purpose left to his existence was this final mission. Some days, it was the only thing preventing him from ending it all. And other days he wondered if that was an excuse to postpone the inevitable, to hold off his reckoning just a little longer. Itachi didn't fear no longer being alive. This life was cruel. But there was a distinct trepidation around the prospect of joining the dead that hadn't been there before, where the confrontations of his heinous acts awaited on the other side. Mother, father, Izumi, aunts, uncles, his cousins, Shisui. Itachi focused on his breathing, his purpose, closed the world out until the only voice to break the silence was Shisui. I left the burden on you to sort out the conflict between the Uchiha and the village, Shisui murmured. As my best friend and the greatest ninja I ever met, I thought you were the answer. I hoped you were the key to everything, as if you could face any odds and come out the other end. I don't know, as a chosen one? I'm not. I might have overreached, yeah. You did what you believed right. Shisui placed his hands on Itachi's shoulder. How are your evolved eyes working though? They're good. Itachi admitted. I see well in the dark. Swallowing, he looked up at his best friend. Here, Shisui stood whole and healthy, but he died. It wasn't real. It was a dream, and perhaps that's what made it easier to admit some things. Shisui, you should know. The situation grew worse after your death. Both sides were opposed to listen. What about our plan? Why didn't you do it? It was impossible. Itachi knew he was powerful, but he'd never been particularly gifted in the art of talking to people. He and Shisui had been a team, where the latter acted the voice of reason who swayed people to follow. For all of Itachi's raw strength, nothing worked after Shisui died. None would listen. No one was on Itachi's side, while everything spiraled rapidly to a fever pitch. You died intending for your sacrifice to activate my Mangekyo Sharingan, so that I'd gain the power of Koto Amatsukami too, and use it on Father in your stead. But I didn't. I couldn't. You didn't get a Koto Amatsukami? Shisui asked, politely curious, as if they were discussing ramen flavors. No. It turns out, that's not how these powers work. It's not? I never knew anyone else with a Mangekyo, Shisui murmured. Back then, Itachi didn't either. For years, Itachi thought Shisui was the only Uchiha who'd evolved his eyes to the Mangekyo Sharingan. My father had them too, but he kept it a secret, Itachi said. You had no way to learn that the Mangekyo's powers differed between users. The 3 stages of the Sharingan grants the same powers for everyone who activates them, and we assumed the same was the case for the Mangekyo. But we were mistaken. Itachi had researched this since Shisui died, consulting older records and older Uchiha shrines for answers. Answers he hadn't known to look for before he held his power himself, because nothing was working the way he and Shisui had expected. My Mangekyo power isn't the Koto Amatsukami, it's the Tsukiyomi. Though the Tsukiyomi is a powerful genjutsu as well, it can't brainwash people the way the Koto Amatsukami can. When Itachi found Shisui on the last day of his life, he lost an eye to Danzo, and time was running out. Shisui couldn't go home. If their clan saw what Danzo had done to him, it was as good as starting the civil war. But Shisui also couldn't go to Konoha, because Danzo would kill him and take his last eye. So with his back pressed against the corner, the walls closing in on all sides, his best friend's last desperate hope had been to give his remaining Mangekyo Sharingan to Itachi, entrusting Itachi to fulfill the failed plan in Shisui's stead. It had made sense in the moment. Shisui's remaining eye could still be used to brainwash Itachi's father into a peaceful option. With the clan head firmly opposed to fighting, the rest of the Uchiha would have a harder time doing anything. But that wasn't enough. After what Danzo did, it was clear the Konoha Council had to be placated too, and so Shisui threw himself into the Naka River to die, intending for Itachi himself to gain the Koto Amatsukami to grant him the power to force the Konoha Council, force Danzo, into a peaceful solution. Shisui's eye would force Fugaku, Itachi's eyes would force Danzo. Except a great flaw in the plan. Shisui gambled big, bet his life on this plan, yet lost. Because Itachi didn't get to Koto Amatsukami. Though they were both Uchihas, both good at genjutsu, cousins, Itachi was different. Such was hindsight. It made them both look short-sighted and naive. I couldn't complete the plan as you intended. You made me more powerful, but power wasn't the answer. It couldn't mend things. I see. Shisui sighed, his voice faded. I died in vain, then. No! Itachi lied heatedly, unable to let him say that. Even in dreams, The death couldn't be for nothing. He wouldn't let it. He'd force a purpose if he had to. I couldn't fix it myself either, Itachi, Shisui said. But I still hoped. It's why I trusted everything to you, to protect Konoha and the Uchiha clan. There wasn't any other way, Itachi murmured, guilt gnawing in his stomach. The Uchiha were doomed regardless of what I did. Sharp awareness flickered briefly across Shisui's face, twisting his expression into something haunted. Is that what you tell yourself? For a horrible second, a bloody scar appeared diagonally across his face, as if someone had driven a katana through his head. But the next moment it was gone, returning to his casual self, as if he never said anything. Shaken, Itachi opened his mouth, but no words came out. Seconds passed while Shisui watched him with an empty, unknowing gaze. Was Itachi supposed to tell the rest now? Shisui didn't know, but Itachi had tried? Again, hindsight was 20/20, and somehow it felt like such an empty gesture on this side of events, not unlike Shisui's failed attempt at giving Itachi the Kotamatsu Kami. What do good intentions matter when all it results in is pain? Itachi's attempt to ask Danzo to spare Harui and Izumi were denied and made obsolete. At the end of it all, Itachi was a traitor, maybe most of all to Shisui, because the power his best friend died to give Itachi for the purpose of becoming strong enough to save their family, he'd instead used to kill their family, murdering Shisui's sister himself, the person Shisui had wanted to protect more than anyone, so Itachi's brother could be spared. But Shisui would do the same in Itachi's shoes. He'd pick Harui, even if it meant doing unspeakable acts to see it through. Right? No? Yes? Surely he would. They had always been aligned. Despite being so different, they saw eye to eye on so much. Shisui understood sacrifices and the necessity of protecting Konoha from the shadows. No one else would get it, but surely Shisui would. He'd understand this too. There had been reasons filling Itachi's head before. Over and over and over he considered the pros and cons, until Itachi's entire world was but a black and white list of extremes. Konoha prevented destabilization. The Uchiha would not prevail through a civil war. Regardless of what Itachi picked, the children had no future anyway. Konoha would stand strong, the Uchiha's honor would remain intact, Sasuke could be spared and safe, because Itachi would be the culprit. He'd take on the blame, the dishonor, and his brother could have a future. And so forth. Initially, Itachi had such a neat list of arguments for why he made his choice, one side outweighing the other, and he followed the one logic dictated he should. He researched, made his plan, then, unheeding of his own emotions, thinking like a shinobi, Itachi acted. Yet when the blade fell, it had been anything but black and white. It was red. It was loud. It was disputed, messy, and inexcusable. Cursed. Curse you. Itachi woke with a start, a crow pecking sharply at his scalp. His hideout was being disturbed, barely allowing Itachi a second to adjust into wakefulness as he sent the crow away and stood. 3 months had passed since the massacre. It was enough time Itachi had adapted to the disorientation of a life of constant movement, of being a criminal, and accepted that homelessness would be a state of living from now on. But he took precautions, and Itachi was ready when Madara invited himself inside without knocking. "What do you need, Madara?" "Awake, Does Pain have a mission for me?" he asked, uninterested in making small talk of meaningless observations. "No." "Do you?" Itachi said flatly. "A secret one?" Itachi joined the terror organization Akatsuki when he fled Konoha, where Uchiha Madara was the head, though few knew that, even amongst the Akatsuki members themselves. The ancient Uchiha had appointed the strongest member of the organization, Pain, to act the leader in his stead, while Madara pulled the strings from the shadows. Itachi preferred Pain though. Itachi preferred everyone else in the Akatsuki over Madara, even though it included S-ranked criminals such as Biwa Yuzo of the Seven Swordsmen of the Mist and Orochimaru of the Sannin. Yuzo was Itachi's partner within the criminal organization. He was rather hands-off and kept everyone at a distance, which Itachi preferred compared to the overly friendly members such as Orochimaru. The man known as the Snake Sannin, a living legend who turned traitor against Konoha, was the main reason Itachi never took a nap without half a dozen alarms and traps, as a precaution to wake up in time before he got his eyes ripped out. Not that Orochimaru was unique there. Another missing ninja, Sasori of the Red Sand, seemed interested in turning Itachi into a puppet. Kakuzu had suggested they kill Itachi to collect a bounty set on his head. Though when that was shut down by Pain, Itachi learned Kakuzu had a heart collection he was looking to stock up on, so he remained on guard. Still, Itachi preferred them all over Madara, even if he wasn't as impatient to get spare Sharingan anymore. Like crows flocking to a carcass, Madara had scavenged the Uchiha of their Sharingan before their bodies were even cool, before some of them were even fully dead, leaving Danzo to settle for grave robbing after leftovers. These people were Itachi's peers now, and who was he to judge? Wasn't Itachi's rightful place with the cursed and condemned anyway? It would never be enough, but as part of his repentance, Itachi would endure and keep spying from within the Akatsuki. It was an elegant solution to a crucially vital job, not to waste any more lives when Itachi was already marked for damnation. Madara strolled in and made himself comfortable, seating himself cross-legged on the floor with little finesse, acting as if he didn't find Itachi any sort of threat. "For some time, I've heard interesting whispers about the clan," Madara told him, tugging on the knitted green scarf around his neck. That was new, and Itachi had a nagging suspicion about where he'd gotten it from. "Have you?" "No. I first heard rumors of a survivor a few weeks ago, one that didn't sound like your little brother. I went to investigate tonight, and good thing I did." Itachi didn't let his uneasiness show. Whoever this was, they'd know too much, not only regarding the coup d'etat the Uchiha had been plotting, but they would also know why Itachi committed the massacre. They might even guess he'd acted on orders. They could tell, which begged the question of why Hiruzen-sama would allow that possibility. It had been months since the massacre, yet Hiruzen-sama saw fit to give his Uchiha medical care, even though they could risk destabilizing Konoha if they started speaking? Either this person didn't know much of the Uchiha plot to begin with, or they had memory issues. Either someone too young to have been in on the meetings, or perhaps they remained so injured it made no difference. The Hokage might not have been the man who ordered the hit, but after it happened his hands were tied. For Konoha's stability he had to cover up the truth. After all, what clan would feel safe in Konoha if they learned the council had the strongest of them all massacred out of a political disagreement? Then it'd all be for nothing. If the truth ever saw light, everything Itachi did would become meaningless. With such stakes, there were few other explanations for why Hokage-sama would allow a survivor to recover. Madara shook his head. "You were sloppy with your cousin, Itachi." "A cousin could mean so many people," Itachi called most of his clansmen a cousin, and yet it was likely a child. A cousin who Madara implied Itachi specifically had messed up with, and the one who fit the description was truly only Haruhi? Yes, Madara confirmed. She wasn't dead when the Ambu arrived. She's been in a coma, hidden away. That's not possible. Itachi had made sure she died. It had gotten unnecessarily messy, yes, far beyond what he intended, but he killed her. Haruhi's only sin was being born to the wrong parents. Like the other children, none of this was her fault, and Itachi intended her death to be swift. What a failure. For weeks, Itachi mindfully planned how to eliminate two Uchihas, contaminating the water tanks in the district with a light poison minor enough it shouldn't be noticed, but just enough to dull their reflexes. They'd attacked at the hour the clan would all be at a compound, but also scattered in ways that prevented them from coming together, and those who tried anyway were hit with spring traps Itachi prepared, allowing himself and Madara to systematically eliminate the members according to threat level. The police, teens, adults, Genin, Chunin and Jonin mindfully considered. But amongst all that planning, Itachi overlooked the kids. After making sure Sasuke spent the afternoon away from their cousins, Itachi hadn't truly fought over the youngest skill levels. As expected, Haruhi had no chance against Itachi, but unexpectedly, her speed and ability to keep a clear mind amidst the death threat had taken him off guard anyway. She looked achingly like one of Shisui's clones. The only difference was how his best friend had never looked at Itachi with such terror, causing him to hesitate when he shouldn't. But no, for an instant, his body just stopped of its own. Even amidst this mission fog, even when it was too late, he'd gone too far to stop now. He hadn't wanted to do it. Not to Shisui and not to Haruhi. But he had to. She had to die. For the greater good. For Sasuke. Had Itachi kept focused and ignored their resemblance, it would have been efficient and clean. Like with Ume and Eta, Haruhi would have been dead before she'd known to be afraid. Haruhi was amongst the last people Itachi had wanted to suffer. She was just an innocent kid. She could have been his sister too, only for it to end like that. Was it worse Itachi hadn't put up a front? It had seemed cruel and unnecessary to bother with pretenses when Haruhi's fate was death. She'd never have a chance to speak of what she saw and heard that evening, so why lie? She didn't know it was to forcefully cleave out a future for Sasuke, and frankly, would knowing that make a difference to her? How was Itachi to defend that? Sasuke is worth more than you? To Itachi it was just true, but even he knew that wasn't an objective fact which held weight outside his own biases. This wasn't like his parents, who saw benefit in going quietly if it meant their children lived. Haruhi hadn't been offered any such incentive. So she fought, pleaded for mercy, and it had worked to an extent. His cousin had slipped away from him, dragging out what should have been a short process. As her executioner, Itachi had taken on the responsibility for her final moments on this earth. Yet he couldn't make it quick or painless. Itachi miscalculated. Failing wasn't something he was very familiar with. Had Itachi failed at killing a target before her? Yes. Once. And it was the same person who stood in front of him now. Years before, Madara attacked his Genin team, killing Tenma while Itachi could not even touch him. He still couldn't. Itachi shouldn't have underestimated Haruhi though. She was Shisui's sister, but this? He watched Haruhi's life leave her eyes. It couldn't be. Your beliefs make no difference. The girl lives, Madara told him, fidgeting with a scarf hanging over his shoulders. Did you check at all? Yes, she should be dead. You'd be astonished what kinds of trauma some are able to endure. Presumed dead isn't the same as truly being dead, no matter how bad it looks on the outside. I put a katana through her head. And yet it wasn't enough, Madara remarked, retying his scarf. That's twice she survived your attempts. I should have sorted her out myself. Dead or alive doesn't matter when she's in a coma. It'd be kinder if she was dead, Itachi murmured, meaning it. By some twisted miracle she hadn't died. But in what state? What kind of life would she have? Itachi pushed aside unpleasant ideas of what Danzo might do to her. On house arrest or not, or with his root division disbanded, none of that would stop a determined Danzo. If he wished Haruhi dead, she would be. So the fact she wasn't meant Danzo saw other purposes in her. Of course, Danzo had access to plenty dead Uchihas. But a live, comatose Uchiha? Outside the deal he struck with Itachi? Left defenseless in a hospital bed? As of yet, Hiruzen-sama must be the only counterforce keeping Haruhi there. But what about when the aftermath of the Uchiha downfall gave way for the next emergency? When the Hokage's attention shifted? I'll go to Konoha, Itachi said. It'd be dangerous. They were on alert and hunting for him. But Itachi owed Haruhi this much. The least he could do was end her pain. I'll kill her. You're too late. Madara sounded more amused than annoyed. Is that so? What he could possibly find funny was beyond Itachi. Madara never shared his full purpose for aiding with the massacre, though Itachi suspected it was to eliminate threats. He'd been afraid of the Uchiha. Though Haruhi was an Uchiha too, perhaps Madara deemed her too insignificant to care. Maybe you could have made it look a natural outcome of her injuries before, but not anymore, Madara said. She's under constant supervision, and Konoha Hospital is all a twitter, because the girl woke up.